Excellences, Messieurs les ambassadeurs and High Commissioners, Messieurs les présidents des chambres de commerce et du patronat ici présents, distingués partenaires, chers invités, bonjour et bienvenue à cette deuxième journée du Forum Africa. Je vous le disais hier, c'est la 7e édition de cet événement biennal qui regroupe et invite des partenaires, des entreprises, des organisations internationales à se réunir et à envisager l'investissement sur le continent africain. Hier, il a été question de la croissance sur le continent africain, il a été question des défis et des potentialités sur ce continent aux milliards de possibilités. Je vous rappelle le thème de ce Forum Africa 2015, Horizon 2025, investissement et opportunités d'affaires en Afrique. Le pays vedette, c'est le pays de la Teranga, le Sénégal, qui est représenté par une large présence aujourd'hui, comme il l'a été hier. Et demain, vous aurez l'occasion, si vous êtes également avec nous, de participer à la Journée du Sénégal, qui va vous permettre de découvrir davantage les possibilités d'investissement au Sénégal. Aujourd'hui, ce sera une journée très, très intéressante avec des Forum Africa Talks. Ce seront des rencontres en vis-à-vis avec un modérateur qui vont vous permettre d'en apprendre plus sur différentes organisations, mais sur différents aspects également de l'investissement sur le continent africain. Alors, sans plus tarder, je vais commencer directement et appeler sur scène Monsieur... D'abord, je vais appeler le modérateur, pardonnez-moi. Je vais appeler le modérateur, notre ami Serge Tcha, qui a modéré hier 2 événements. Il est donc non seulement journaliste à Afrique Expansion Magazine, mais il faut dire qu'il est quand même l'un des magiciens derrière l'événement du Forum Africa. Alors, je vous invite à l'accueillir avec des applaudissements. Et c'est lui qui va vous présenter le conférencier d'aujourd'hui, M. Jean-Philippe Prosper, vice-président de la Société financière internationale du groupe de la Banque mondiale. Donc, je vous invite quand même à accueillir M. Serge Tcha avec des applaudissements. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. On m'entend? Voilà, c'est réglé. Merci beaucoup, Hadi. Je ne méritais pas tant. En tout cas, j'espère que vous applaudirez plus pour le premier conférencier qu'on aura aujourd'hui parce que c'est vraiment exceptionnel. On va vivre une journée exceptionnelle avec les personnes que nous allons recevoir. On reçoit dans un premier temps Monsieur Jean-Philippe Prosper, qui est vice-président à la Société financière internationale, qui a quitté Washington pour être avec nous. Je vous demande de l'accueillir comme il se doit, mesdames et messieurs. Monsieur Jean-Philippe Prosper. On va aborder avec lui un thème particulièrement intéressant. Ce sera de savoir, en réalité, qu'est-ce qu'il faudrait faire pour éviter le piège du financement. C'est-à-dire que c'est largement reconnu aujourd'hui, la croissance africaine, ce n'est pas que les matières premières, c'est aussi une forte demande intérieure. C'est plusieurs champions comme Dangote qui ont vocation à éclore, Tony Lumulu avec UBA Bank par exemple, Monsieur Diago, le groupe NCA, on va parler tout à l'heure du deal de l'année. Et parfois, on a besoin de financement pour aller encore plus vite, pour aller encore plus loin. Il y a les États aussi qui doivent construire des infrastructures, mais sans se surendetter. C'est de toutes ces questions qu'on va discuter avec le vice-président de la Société financière internationale. Puisqu'il est plus important, plus intelligent, plus raffiné que moi, je me tais et je cède la parole à M. Jean-Philippe Prosper.
Merci. Merci, Kadi. Merci, Serge. Écoutez, désolé. La voix ne porte pas, j'ai une laryngite, mais j'espère que vous allez pouvoir quand même suivre et je pourrai parler. Une petite précision, je crois que Serge m'a présenté comme vice-président, effectivement à l'époque où j'avais accepté de venir à ce forum, j'étais encore vice-président, mais c'est juste pour vous dire qu'il y a un peu moins d'un mois, j'ai démissionné, donc je suis dans une période de transition, je suis à AFC jusqu'à la fin de l'année. Et je pars en retraite, je pars à la retraite. Je vois les gens qui me regardent. Voilà. Bon, d'accord. Disons que je vais faire autre chose. Voilà. Pardon. Attendez, laissez-moi voir. Laissez-moi essayer de comprendre un petit peu comment ça marche, ce truc-là. D'accord. Désolé pour les francophone et on a traduction simultanée. J'avais prévu de faire la présentation en anglais parce qu'en général, dans la plupart des fois, on la fait en anglais. Donc, désolé, je vais le faire en anglais. All right. So I'm grateful. So thanks for your kind introduction again. Grateful to you and the conference team for providing this platform to talk about some of today's risks and the future of financing in Africa. There will be many large opportunities that I hope many of you here will seize. I talk opportunities in Africa to the business in the years ahead. However, despite significant progress over nearly 2 decades, Africa remains a challenging place to invest and do business. And so consideration of these issues is an important part of doing business successfully in these markets. I look forward to reflecting on both the promise and the difficulties that lie ahead in Africa. I'll talk about Africa's economic renaissance. I mean, the past few years, you have heard a lot about it. It has brought with it a new optimism on the continent. Domestic and foreign investment helped fuel growth, high growth actually, I would say, in recent years. This new economic landscape has changed the nature of international interest in Africa. Private capital flows, including foreign direct investment and remittances, listen to this, have overtaken official development assistance. So in other words, we can say Africa is not, if when you look as a continent, I mean, it still needs help, but it's not like just an assisted continent. Investment, they have overtaken ODA. And I'm talking not just remittances, I'm talking foreign direct investments, and we will see that on a few slides. Today, China is a major trading partner, while other emerging markets have increased their presence on the continent. Big companies and investors from developed markets have been joined by newer businesses and funds in recent years. If you look at, on the slide here about strong growth, you will see that investors' interest has a strong underpinning. Africa has been growing at about 5% for a decade and a half, quite a contrast to the last 2 decades of the 20th century. This has helped to give rise to the middle class of consumers, meaning the diaspora coming back, etc. I'm sorry, but I have much less time than we had planned, so I'll go a bit faster to cover the entire picture. International interest has moved beyond natural resources, which still plays an important role, and into many new sectors. We see increasing share of technology, media, and telecoms, and retail and consumer products, as well as financial services. Long neglected infrastructure is now receiving attention. The gap is wide, but there is a new seriousness about addressing power, transport, utilities, and attracting private investors to build or rebuild infrastructure. Young Africans have a new sense of a bright future, and with it expectations for competent leadership, with leaders increasingly, if not always, rising to the challenge. And we have seen that in years, in a number of leaders. Yes, we still have problems in Africa. Yes, there are a number of countries, and you say it's a vast continent where things are not working, but we have improved governance in a number of countries. We have also a number of reforms, and I'll talk a little bit about it. But I just wanted to highlight when I mentioned improved leadership here, and to me, what I like to take as one for me of the best example, a country who have been going for the past 10 years, and which is very dear to my heart over the years. I mention it because I saw today some peoples, I realized with some, not hats, how you call it, casket, hat, caps, about Rwanda. Rwanda, to me, it's a great example also of what has been accomplished over the past years in terms of leadership, how you can make things happen. I'm just taking a few minutes, although the time is short. It's almost personal in a way. The first time I went to Rwanda in 2004, I remember November 2004, you could still see the bullets, on the walls and all the genocide in Asia. I say, what's going to happen? And I can tell you, 10 years later, you can't recognize this place. So for me, it's a great example. Also, if you look recently at the Mo Ibrahim Governance Index, Rwanda is the second best now in Africa. So I just wanted to take that as an example of good leadership, you know, what can happen. And I'd like to highlight also what I've seen, a country that's gone to crisis recently, just came out of crisis. You take Ivory Coast, the great improvement that have been done recently, and I want to talk about my also dear friend, Prime Minister Kablan Daka, who has done, of course, the president and the rest. But those are good examples of people who are committed to the continent and where things can change with them. So just wanted to highlight some hopes on for the continent. If you look at slide 2, and I'll start going a bit faster, the African growth story I mentioned is widespread today, and that's the good news. It's all over the place. Look at that map. And in yellow, it's when they are growing, you know, above the 5% mark. And when you look at that, you would see, let me just, I don't see very well everything which is here. In 2013 and 2030, how it is projected where the continent will continue to grow. And when you look what's happening in the rest of the world, you see this is clearly a continent where it's kind of the continent of the future. And there, it's a lot of sound macroeconomic policies who have been control fiscal deficit. I'll talk about the debt issue later because people are talking again, there's some concern about how they're borrowing too much right now, but we'll talk more about it. Let's go, slide 3. However, if you look at all this, you have limited progress in reduction of poverty. In other words, the financial inclusion is not happening enough on the continent. And that's one of the focus that leaders will have to pay attention to, because otherwise, this is going to create more problem. You have seen social unrest in other places. I don't think Africa is immune to that. And if we don't pay attention, and for investors, this is also very important. It's important for all of us and for our own future, for the future of our children, the future of the continent. Let me move on some other one. I had mentioned the change that the region had been undergoing. I mean, there's a huge challenge. I'm sorry. Oof. The continent is, as the population grows, is facing huge challenges as its population grows rapidly and become increasingly urbanized. The urban population is expected to grow, you see from the graph, from about 35% of African population to about 50% by 2040. So, and I remember yesterday somebody was talking about doubling the population will double to 2.4 billion, etc. Yeah, but let's look at what that means, the urban impact. That impact is much larger than it sounds. We are talking about growth of a number of urban population from about 200 million in 2010 to more than 600 million in 2030 and 900 million by 2040. With infrastructure, and I mentioned the issues that we are facing already in transport power, infrastructure barely able to keep pace with today's populations, the pressures will mount quickly. And today, there is only a small industrial base in Africa that has not been increasing rapidly. You can see that as a percentage of GDP. And clearly, when we talk about power, the needs for that, for more power, so on, you will understand why it's very difficult to industrialize the continent. I mean, if you have to pay, in some cases, I remember we were talking to the president of Liberia about a year ago or more, and she was saying they are producing electricity at 50 cents a kilowatt. I mean, where that can go? I mean, there is no way you can compete on that. And so those are real issues that we'll need to address, and we can talk about it. The downsides, though, are very obvious on that. Overcrowded city that lack services, economies unable to produce goods and services domestically, or jobs needed for the young force. However, we talk a lot about that demographic dividend. if rapidly expanding domestic and international financing can be channeled, and that's a big if, we'll talk about it later, into productive parts of African economies, we can envision a huge dividend from these demographic trends, a young and productive workforce with relatively few old people to support that could well be a driver for global growth for decades to come. Sorry. If I were to talk about IFC, how we have looked at it, as IFC, we have been investing in Africa for many years. We were one of the first who, I would say, said we believe in the continent and we have to do something to change it. In 2003 or 2004, we started our decentralization process. And that's when myself personally and some others, we moved to the continent. And I can tell you that we're investing about $140 million a year in Africa. Today we invest $5 billion a year on the continent. And I'm talking about sub-Saharan Africa. So we believe in the story. We have seen it. We have seen improvement, and we think opportunities are there, and we can do that. So we have been investing significantly in Africa for many years. Our strategy for investing going forward, focusing on sizing the opportunities created by Africa's big challenges. I presented very briefly here: bridging the infrastructure gap, building productive industries, and leading inclusive business approaches. That's how I would summarize, basically, our approach and how we have defined our strategy for Africa. And I won't go into all of the details. However, one thing which is very important, IFC and other multilaterals, we, of course, despite all the amount of money that we say we could put, we cannot meet Africa's financing needs alone. Already, new investors are starting to play a big role. The urgency today is on creating deeper, more liquid capital markets and a wider range of financing options that reflect the growing size and complexity on the African economies. If you look at these slides that are here, what it does reflect, really, is the concerns that people have been talking about, the concern rising on African borrowings. We have been working ourselves on deepening, I'm talking about IFC, African markets for many years. But there's an urgency that grows out of concerns about Africa's potential for a crisis and perceived recent borrowing binge in the Eurobond market. As African sovereign debt issues exploded in 2014, commentators are increasingly wondering, and you can see all of those comments, about whether Africa's high-growth economies are overextended through public debt. Further underpinning the concerns, the looming U.S. federal tightening. I mean, you read the press, you hear everything that's going to happen. The slowdown in several BRICS economies. And in recent weeks, you have heard it, the market turmoil in China. Remember, China has become a major investor in Africa, especially infrastructure and natural resources. What does that mean for us? If you go into slide 7, you can see how African debt has grown over the past decade, from reliance of official sources, as I was mentioning about ODA and all these official development assistance, to a slightly heavier reliance on private creditors. Here, I'll show you on the Eurobonds now. On this one, you can see how the Eurobonds from sovereign insurers played a big role with outstanding issues from sub-Saharan Africa, excluding South Africa, increasing from less than $20 billion in 2011 to more than $50 billion by early 2015. Here, we show you a number of countries, a number of nations that are increasingly borrowing more on the market. one other interesting slide here is to see, now you see the numbers that shows you between the last 8 years between 2006 and 2014. Here, appetite of favorable rates. You see, despite they have done better, and you all have heard that on the news, even better than some of the European countries, not to point at anything here. Now, this is what I was talking about. The world's fastest growing region for foreign direct investment. Is that going to happen? But you can see what I was talking about, foreign direct investment growing faster than ODA. How much time I have left? Okay, good. Then all right. Let me look at this. If country size, and to me it's one of the most important aspects, if we really want Africa to develop, there's the only one way it's going to happen. If we start, well, one way, no, but it's very important, by deepening the capital markets, where people are going to find the money that they need to invest into their projects. I mean, what the banks, first, there's already an issue that you know with local banks. They finance limited number of large corporates and long-term financing for small and medium enterprise. It's a real issue already. And this the issue there's a way to address, and we are helping in improving the environment for bankers to work, like having credit bureaus and collaterals. You have registering your collateral debt securities, so at least if somebody owes you money, it's registered properly, et cetera, et cetera. That infrastructure all is important, but this won't be enough. There is no way, no country that we know that have developed like that. What's going to be important is developing the capital markets so you can go and issue papers, so you can borrow, you can get actual to contractual savings from insurance, particularly life insurance or pensions, when you can get long-term funding for your projects. That's how you build large infrastructure projects. And, you know, big corporates, that's how they develop, and all over countries. But look at this. Did you see what the size of Africa would look like? And frankly, it's only South Africa in terms of what the capital market represents today. And let me show you another one. Now, if you want to develop, we're talking about infrastructure. When we make funding for large infrastructure projects, we do 15 years, 20 years with the private sector. But the market cannot do that. The local markets, they cannot do. So today, there is a real issue also for financing large infrastructure projects. There is a problem of having good quality projects, well-developed, structured projects. That's one of the biggest issues. But also in addition, and this is just to tell you, to give you an idea of also the issues that you have. If you are, this is, if we're talking about electricity power, you see what the amount of power that you have in Africa, you can say it, the continent is not there. In green, you have Latin America, and here you're moving. Where you have the pinky in the middle, Africa should come here. It's disappeared. There's no size, there's no electricity, no power. If you have to put in a slide. 1 minute, good. So let me stop here. I'll skip at least 5 pages and go to, so what I've focused, one point I don't want to forget, what I've focused mainly on foreign investors and governments. I would be remiss if I didn't say a few words about the growing importance of African companies in leading investments in the years ahead. There is a misperception that foreign investment is in the driving Africa's growth story. Much of the investment, especially in banking and finance, telecommunications, retail and services, is driven by regional players. South Africa is emerging as a leading investor on the continent, followed by Kenya and Nigeria. In recent years, increasingly dynamic, large African companies have emerged, many working in partnership with foreign investors and often with a primary focus on regional and developed markets. I won't go into the details. What I'd like to mention here, I'd like to conclude by emphasizing that today in Africa, despite the huge promise, there is much work to be done. At IFC, we are working hard to increase our financing and also deepen and strengthen markets. There will continue to be a role for IFC and other multilaterals to support financial institutions and capital markets. And there are opportunities for multilaterals to work closely with government issuers to ensure good fiscal policies and transparencies around bond issues that encourage confidence that funds are being put to good use. Africa's transition to urbanized modern economies remain the most promising opportunities in the world today. We encourage investors to look closer and find new opportunities. I encourage a stronger understanding of the risks before us and opportunities that offer good returns. I hope many of you will play an important role in ensuring a strong dividend. Africa's demographics and urbanization is paid in full. I thank you for this opportunity to be with you and look forward to discussing these important issues in Africa throughout the rest of today's event. Last word, just not anecdote, real facts. I can tell you, it's a continent where you can make money. At IFC, we invest a lot. We make a lot of equity investment in companies. I can tell you, when I was based in Africa during the 10 years, the period 2000, if we take a 10-year period, anyone between 2000 and now, whether it's 2003, 13, or 2010, our internal rate of return on our equity investment in real terms has exceeded 25%. So you can make money. Thank you.
Je pense que la conclusion, voilà, la conclusion, comme on dit, il a tout dit, comme on dit souvent. Voilà. J'avais plusieurs questions, mais je vais m'en limiter à une pour qu'on puisse en prendre une à deux dans la salle maximum, parce qu'on va décaler un peu le programme, puisque plus tard à 9h40, on va avoir le deuxième panel pour finir à 10h10 et écourter la pause pour que vous ayez juste 5 minutes. Donc, on va essayer de respecter ça. Donc, revenons peut-être même sur votre propos conclusif. Vous disiez qu'on peut faire de l'argent. Moi, je me suis toujours demandé, il y a la croissance en Afrique, 5-6%, l'Éthiopie doit être à près de 10% actuellement. Est-ce que justement, à cause de ce problème de financement, c'est vrai aussi que vous avez dit durant votre présentation que l'Afrique du Sud est un leader dans l'investissement en Afrique aujourd'hui, mais moi, je me demande souvent si les Africains seront à même eux-mêmes de profiter de la croissance, eu égard des vastes moyens que d'autres ont dans le monde et donc ont comme capacité à investir et à profiter de la croissance africaine. Moi, je voudrais avoir votre point de vue là-dessus.
D'abord, la première chose, c'est que de plus en plus, il y a beaucoup plus d'entreprises africaines aujourd'hui, ce qu'on appelle, large African companies, qui en sont en train de bénéficier. Si vous prenez, j'ai parlé du Nigeria, mais pour ne citer que quelques groupes, Dangote, vous savez, aujourd'hui, il est connu comme, enfin, je dis après Forbes, la liste, l'homme le plus riche d'Afrique. Il investit pas mal aussi un peu partout. Aujourd'hui, enfin un peu partout, disons beaucoup plus, la grande majorité est toujours au Nigeria, mais il fait de plus en plus d'investissements ailleurs. Si vous voulez des groupes comme UBA, avec Tony Elumelu, ils font de plus en plus d'investissements également dans le reste du continent. Et puis, bon, il y a toute la panoplie de grands groupes sud-africains. Maintenant, quelques groupes kenyans. En fait, en Afrique de l'Est aujourd'hui, les groupes kenyans sont un peu partout. En Afrique de l'Est, donc, si vous voulez, ça se fait de plus en plus. Ça, c'est un. Deuxièmement, une entreprise, même si elle a plein de ressources, qui se respecte, je dirais, entre guillemets, elle a intérêt à avoir un partenaire local. Parce qu'il faut pouvoir comprendre et naviguer les contraintes, les challenges, j'en ai parlé, qui existent sur le continent. Et puis finalement, dans le monde que nous connaissons aujourd'hui, les gens investissent là où le monde pratiquement ouvert, là où ils peuvent faire de l'argent. Donc que ce soit un chien ou un chat qui investissent, si ça crée des emplois, si la population africaine peut en bénéficier, c'est le plus important. Ce que, à mon sens, le plus important, pas que M. Dangote devienne beaucoup plus riche ou que M. Elumelu devienne plus riche ou que Patrice Motsepe devienne plus riche ou autre, etc. Ce qui va être important, c'est ce dont on parle ici, de financial inclusion, de cette population de jeunes qui continue de grandir, etc., qu'elle puisse trouver du travail et effectivement que l'économie continue de grandir. Et puis il y aura l'effet multiplicateur et tout le monde en bénéficiera.
Bien sûr. Bien sûr. On parle de 10 à 15 millions de jeunes qui vont entrer sur le marché du travail année après année. Mais pour donner un exemple de ce que je voulais dire, parce qu'effectivement, Dangote est extrêmement respectable, son groupe se diversifie effectivement de manière géographique sur le continent à grande allure. Mais je vais vous prendre un exemple. Parlons de M. Artusan, qui est un jeune Camerounais qui a inventé ce qu'on appelle le cardiopad. Donc, un outil qui est une tablette qui permet de faire des tests, je ne sais pas si on dit, c'est pas encéphalogramme, mais enfin, par rapport à la cardiologie à distance, grâce à Internet. Aujourd'hui, il n'a même pas encore produit, disons, 1000 à 10 000 unités de cette machine-là. On peut penser que c'est à cause du financement, alors qu'il y a une problématique réelle. Au Cameroun, je crois qu'il n'y a pas 100 cardiologues pour une population de plus de 20 millions d'habitants. Il y a ce genre d'exemple, c'est-à-dire que des fois, on a des solutions pratiques, mais à cause du manque de financement, parce que s'il était, je crois, dans d'autres pays, pour ne pas citer les États-Unis par exemple, face à ce problème réel de la santé, l'inaccessibilité des routes, les gens qui sont malades, des fois, bon, voilà, les villages, ce n'est pas facile de trouver un cardiologue de toute façon, même en ville, puisque je crois que le chiffre c'était 20 pour 20 millions, c'était insuffisant. Donc il y a aussi ce genre de problème réel, des petites entreprises qui ne peuvent pas devenir des grandes PME à cause du financement. C'est aussi de ça dont je voulais parler.
Bon, écoutez, je crois que j'ai posé la problématique tout à l'heure. Peut-être, je n'ai pas eu le temps d'entrer dans les détails, mais je vais vous répondre en illustrant, ou alors en pour vous poser une autre question. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez qui s'est passé aux États-Unis ou dans des pays comme le Canada? Comment ils font les petits? Parce que, qui ont commencé comme ce monsieur. Où est-ce qu'ils ont trouvé les financements? Les Bill Gates et compagnie, où est-ce qu'ils ont trouvé? Souvent, d'abord, il y a les financements de la famille et autres.
Love money, oui.
Mais également, il y a aussi ce qu'on appelle venture capital. Il y a des gens qui prennent des risques sur ce genre d'entreprise. Et c'est pour ça, quand je parlais de développement de marché de capitaux chez nous, tout ceci fait partie de cela aussi. Et quand je parle, parce que je parle au sens large, ça ne veut pas dire seulement de marché où vous allez pouvoir émettre des obligations. Ce sera des marchés où vous allez... Et nous, par exemple, nous investissons de plus en plus en capital risque. Si je prends AFC, en Afrique, par exemple. L'argent que nous avons gagné en Afrique dont je parle, c'est surtout en capital risque. Hein. Je crois qu'il y a d'autres personnes.
Je ne sais pas qui est là. Pardon. Bon, vous allez, s'il vous plaît, poser rapidement les questions, présenter. Bon, Madame Copson la connaît, bien sûr. Vous présentez, question vraiment très courte. Oui, c'est ça. Vous posez et il va répondre aux deux à la fin, après que vous avez proposé. Madame Copson.
Mais c'est parce que vous avez fait un très bon exposé par rapport à la possibilité de faire de l'argent. Et vous avez aussi souligné le problème de la jeunesse et que les investissements ne sont pas en parallèle avec une lifting up of the people. So there's a problem there. And I'm just wondering if the major companies have developed a network for social responsibility. Y a-t-il un intérêt dans la responsabilité sociale pour que les gens qui font beaucoup d'argent, 25% c'est bon par année, et que ça soit réinvesti pour créer l'emploi pour les jeunes?
D'accord. Monsieur, la question, on va répondre après. Je vais vous présenter l'entreprise.
Je m'étais présenté hier, là, mais peut-être que d'autres sont arrivés
Il
aujourd'hui.
y a de nouvelles personnes.
OK, bon. Donc, c'est ça. Et puis, moi, je m'appelle Djibo Boubacar. Je suis président directeur général du cabinet multi-conseil en environnement et développement durable, Madiba Inc. Madiba, Nelson Mandela a été décédé fin 2013. En mai 2014, moi, j'ai enregistré cette compagnie-là. C'est une multinationale qui est en gestation. Donc, ma question, la tête commence à sortir, ou bien c'est les pieds qui sortent d'abord. Les pieds comme...
S'il vous plaît, la question.
Bon, c'est bon?
On peut dire le forceps.
Le forceps. OK. Donc, ma question est la suivante. Je pense que vous l'avez déjà égratigné un peu là. Donc, vraiment, c'est la question de l'œuf et la poule. Quand on parle de financement, les banques, elles prêtent à quelqu'un qui a l'argent. On te dit, amène des actes de cession, amène ceci, amène cela. Alors que l'intelligence, là, tu peux être intelligent. Et à partir de $1 million, là, en 2 ans, tu vas faire 1 milliard. Mais à cause que tu n'as pas accès à du financement, ça n'arrive pas. Donc ça, je ne sais pas c'est quoi les dispositions que on peut prendre de façon très pratique pour vraiment résoudre ce genre de problème. Les plus intelligents ne sont pas les plus riches. Oui, chez nous, on dit, un parti politique l'a dit, ah, nous, on dit, vous êtes riche, vous n'avez pas les idées. L'autre parti a dit, ah, quand tu seras riche, toi aussi, tu vas perdre tes idées. Et c'est effectivement ce qui est arrivé. 15 ans après, ils sont venus au pouvoir, ils ont perdu les idées.
Merci.
Ok, merci.
Non, mais Black Dog, merci pour avoir soulevé ce point, and you too, Mrs. Cook. Because the problem that I had today is a short amount of time and at a particular subject to address. One thing I'd like to make sure, though, is that you don't get out here with the wrong impression that IFC, we are interested only by making money. Clearly, I'm talking to a group of investors, and what's important for you as investors, if you are going to invest into a continent, on a continent or in a country, you want to make sure that you can make a good return on your money. Otherwise, why invest your money? So that's why I put the focus on that. But clearly, talking about, and that's why I highlighted in my presentation also that aspect of financial inclusion. And when we talk about social responsibility, those issues are extremely important for us at IFC. Remember that the owners of IFC are you. Those are the member countries. I mean, there is no reason why Côte d'Ivoire would put its money in IFC or Canada or others if it's for IFC to do what Banque du Canada, Banque Nationale du Canada will do better. This is their job. They are commercial bankers. They will do that better than we do. Why would you put your money in an institution like IFC or in African Development Bank or in others? Clearly, this is our role, and although we support the private sector, and that's part of our role, making sure that the private sector can do its job and what it knows how to do, which is trying to make a good profit, etc. We put in place we have government put in place the proper business environment to try the private sector, but also very importantly, our social responsibility. I'll take the example when Mrs. asked about social responsibility. One of the reasons, for example, we invest with some very large companies. It's because we can help them address some of the environmental and social issues, and more importantly, we can help small and medium companies. When we did a project in Ghana with a company called Newmont Company, I mean, Newmont Company, it's a huge mining company. Newmont doesn't need IFC's money to make the project work, but they came to work with us because of the environmental standards that we have, and also because we have social experts that will help them develop a social program. So what we did in Ahafo with Newmont is develop a social program where we build school for children, but more importantly, develop a network of small and medium companies that will provide services to Newmont after that, whether the one in terms of food or repairing their machine, etc., which is very important for Newmont because they understand that they need a license to operate. If they don't do something that benefits the community, that will bite them after. And ourselves, we take advantage in working with them to develop that agenda and help the small and medium enterprise. And we do that a lot. Just to give an example. And to come back to what the gentleman was saying, yes, I mentioned that financing is an issue. One of the programs that we have in Africa that we call, and I can talk easily about it because I was one of the persons who developed the program when I was manager for financial markets at IFC. It was what we call Africa MSME, micro, small, and medium enterprise, where we took $30 million of our profits and we set up and we developed a program of advisory services where we work with banks to help them go down market, in other words, develop an SME banking department when they were more corporate, or even some micro bring them to small. And this is to address the issues that we mentioned, that those small companies, for them to have access. Because you have, I mean, it takes, you cannot work with small companies the same way you work with large corporates. I know we are going, time is gone, but I just wanted to address those issues very quickly.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Prosper. Merci beaucoup. Micro. Vraiment, c'est très aimable. Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Prosper est très sympathique, donc si vous voulez continuer à poser les questions, c'est sûr qu'il y répondra. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Prosper.
Merci de me porter volontaire.